I'm Layne Hartsell, and I'm here with Darryl Macer of the AUSN, the American University of Sovereign Nations, and he's a trained biologist, molecular biologist, went to Cambridge University, and went on to found a new kind of university, and it was around 2012, wasn't it? So welcome, Darryl.
Thank you, Layne.
I want to ask you about mRNA vaccines. This is something that's in the news these days, and you have a certain expertise in the specific areas that a lot of people are talking about. And I think that we at the Korea IT Times would be benefit from getting this information out there, what you have to say about the science. So can you briefly describe the mRNA vaccine, and then we'll move on to, the actual production and the rollout.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Layne. Well, it's my pleasure to talk to you. I mean, I didn't hesitate myself as a molecular biologist and a biophysicist to receive the mRNA vaccine as soon as it was available to me against coronavirus. Whether, I guess there's some questions which people ask. One is it better to use the mRNA vaccine than the traditional methods of vaccine manufacture? And for me, it seems better. I've never really had a serious side effect from any vaccine. From a molecular biology point of view, in the 1980s, when I was doing the research for my doctorate and other research at the Cambridge University and the Medical Research Council Laboratory of Molecular Biology, we tried to develop innovative methods for looking at molecular biology. And at that time, there was a one-way dogma that DNA leads to RNA, leads to protein. Now we've found that actually these are not just one way. We can interface between the RNA and DNA and protein. But this doesn't mean that by taking mRNA, we're going to change our DNA. But we do change our immune system. Now, but not saying that, there are some RNA-based viruses that do embed themselves into our genome, and we carry many of these. And we're still, to work out some of the wonders of this, but it's a constant evolutionary struggle. And as to the way in the future, will mRNA vaccines take over traditional roles? I think the success of Pfizer and Moderna coronavirus vaccines, the rapidity of development and the number of lives they've saved is probably going to revolutionize vaccine making. We will still have multiple paths in the future as well, but I think it's been an interesting technologies, and this has really been proof of the pudding, as we say in English, of how we can deliver something useful for people.
Can you just briefly describe the difference between, say, an adenovirus vaccine and the mRNA vaccine, or the older style?
So the older style of vaccine, to create an immune response in our body, we need to make something foreign that doesn't look like ourselves and put it in our body. And then our immune system will naturally try to fight this as a foreign object. In that way, it protects our body from disease. If any foreign object will elicit some response. So if we insert aluminium as a stimulant, for example, or some metals, this may stimulate the immune response, but the actual target will be the particular antigen, the substance that we're trying to address. And I think it takes, if you insert a fragment into a traditional viral vector, the challenge is includes keeping that original virus from causing the disease that it was originally informed, designed to do by nature. And the wonder of the mRNA vaccine is you don't need to have this viral envelope of viral vector. So it's actually less risk for me. Another form of vaccine some countries have used is attenuated coronavirus, meaning sort of deactivated coronavirus. And generally these are safe. I don't want to raise any concerns. Of course, one concern would be that you didn't deactivate everything, but generally the technology is fairly proven and people can do that. It seems that the mRNA vaccines have created a stronger immune response, both in terms of making antibodies and also in terms of the two of the types of protective cell, the B cells and the T cells in our body. So it actually is really longer lasting immunity. So I think this, it has less risks, I think, than the traditional adenovirus-based, vaccine. Though I think effectively these risks are not so significant if you have a serious disease like this.
Right. Either way, they're safe. In the case of I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, in any way, I mean, they're safe. The risk of side effects, of ill effects, is low. If you are one of those people that has an ill effect or a tragedy, it's a really serious thing. And I personally know people who have had that, have lost relatives, but I know many more people have lost relatives to the disease. And so this is, as probably all of us are experiencing, and I guess most of the viewers of this have had some vaccine shot. And if you haven't, then please do get a vaccine shot. I mean, there's no reason not to, but do speak to your doctor, if you have some serious concerns, and then see. I think in very, very rare cases, they might alter the type of vaccine to minimize any risk of any side effect or any, bad effect with you, because having a repertoire of different vaccines makes it even more safe as a community. Yeah, you can repertoire is if one person has a particular risk factor, then you give them another vaccine which doesn't present a risk to them. But certain types of people have risks, so you should always speak to your doctor. Yeah.
Okay, and then what I was mentioning is, okay, so there's one thing they have to determine, like if you're a young person or middle-aged or older. And the other thing we see that is they ask people to mix vaccines, like you might take the older style and the mRNA style.
Well, this I think the logic of the mixed vaccine, and I have also considered that, is that you have a certain type of immune reaction and antibodies, and your T cells, B cells prepared because of a certain antigen that was presented for me, the Pfizer vaccine. The same if you got the Moderna mRNA vaccine. But if you wanted then the question is, if you try another vaccine as your second or third shot, then is this going to be better for you or not? And probably it's going to be better, but it's not clear. In a few months' time, because I live in the United States now, I will probably, after my 8 months after my second shot, I will probably take a booster shot. And then but probably I'm going to take the mRNA vaccine because I think
Same.
this is probably better for me. But um, I wouldn't, if it was only available to get another type of vaccine to me, I may well choose that. I wouldn't hesitate. And I've recommended to a number of people in different countries because as you mentioned at the beginning, I'm president of the American University of Sovereign Nations. I have students in 40 countries
Right.
experience a pandemic in all different conditions, and some have access to one vaccine or not another. And I know some of the people have had mixed vaccines, and I think this is an advantage. It's also partly of necessity. It's better to get any vaccine than not to get a
Right. Get any
vaccine.
vaccine.
So get any vaccine, but if you had for a booster, it may well be, and we'll follow the literature more. Another thing I should say is because I had to travel between my first and my second shot, I unexpectedly had to travel overseas, and I decided that the 3-month wait between my 2 shots of Pfizer, from an immunological point of view, would probably be better than the 3-week anyway. And I wasn't hesitating, and I was, of course, trying to keep a very low risk profile. And interestingly, when I came back immediately the next day, I got my vaccine, a second shot, and I read some studies, soon after, which sort of vindicated that actually, if you wait for 3 months or 4 months between shots, it actually may be good. And the UK actually did this, different strategy with AstraZeneca, and it proved that it was quite effective. And their public health strategy was, give everyone a first shot and then move to the second shots. And don't worry if it's 3 or 4 months. And that logic is the immunological logic that actually may well be fine to have a booster. But the problem is if you get sick, you can die, more likely if you've only got 1 shot rather than 2. But if you're keeping safe and the whole country's in lockdown, it was not such a big risk. So I think
you also work as a
go ahead.
bioethicist, so you're trained in both the science and philosophy. From a philosophical perspective, there are, say, for example, moral philosophy, which is something that you deal with, and biophilia. Can you speak a little bit about your perspective on the love of life, and then also we have some responsibilities, right, when we're in public, to not spread some kind of dangerous pathogen. So let me let you take it from there on that one.
Yes, from the if we take the broader perspective of human beings as we should love our life and love others, and we have a responsibility to ourselves and to others around us. So very early on in the pandemic, because 20 years ago I'd been working in Asia. I was in Beijing at the time of SARS. I mean, I was working in Japan, and I've seen this. I knew masks would be useful, and I'm from East Asian culture. Wearing masks is normal.
That's
I wear
normal, right?
masks when I'm sick. It's normal. So this was an irony being in the United States and seeing the medical authorities say crazy stuff, and they changed their mind afterwards to say, yes, you should wear a mask. But for a month, they're recommending not to wear masks. Now, the reason was maybe N95 masks had not been stockpiled because of the failure of the government, failure of the stockpile, and keep them for the medical professionals who were dying in the hospitals because they didn't have the protective care. But, anyone should cover their face. We should limit. I wear gloves in supermarkets still in the United States. Okay, still on supermarket trolleys. This is my attitude because minimizing contact. I still, even though I'm double vaccinated, especially now with Delta, I wash my glasses, I wash my face with soap when I come in. I don't bother changing my clothes if I'm not with too many people. It's not the same as it used to be. But this protective measure is a responsibility for me and for people around. And I work with Native American communities and indigenous people with a high risk. They actually got vaccinated even more quickly than myself because of the prioritization in the healthcare system. But yeah, we have a lot of responsibility, and with young children now, we have to try and teach them because they're not yet vaccinated. We have to teach them. So whether or not you're vaccinated, you can still spread, and I think it's just normal to limit. But from a bioethical perspective, that's respect, love. But becoming paranoid to the point of not talking to people, of viewing everyone as a foreigner, as a bag of viruses, this is a very sad thing. And we should be compassionate to some people just can't tolerate. So when we see these protesters in different countries screaming shouting out all their bugs in their voice, I feel sorry for them, because mentally they're really sick. We have to give them compassion. We have to try to give them a space not to infect people and teach them gradually, this is a responsibility, find the right balance. So, finding the balance in things is quite important. And if you're watching this on a train, in a subway train with a mask or double masks and goggles, just be very conscious of, of trying to avoid. And if you are feeling sick, then don't go out. You have to, and I think that responsibility is pretty common in East Asia, but not so common in some countries. And then when I also work with people in developing countries, day laborers, where if they don't work, they have no money, they have no food, they starve that day. And so for us sitting in our room, watching our computer or our telephone or doing our work, it's just a luxury, and it's pure snobbery just to tell these people you have to stay at home. And the government has to provide a system. We have to find a system of protection. We have to find, and that middle way idea is really critical. So from a molecular biologist point of view, we have some people getting sick, some people getting immune, but we do have even young people dying of this disease now. And thank God for mRNA vaccines. I think we can say they've really stimulated and will really help us. I have no concerns as a molecular biologist about what they do in my body. I have no long-term concerns. I have a long-term COVID is much more scary, and don't, just some people will get infected. Again, don't become paranoid. We have been living with viruses since we were an animal, and other animals live with viruses. It's this co-evolution, and the fact that vaccines can help us keep alive in this process of co-evolution is really critical.
Darryl Macer, thank you so much for your time.